Okay, we are going to begin the panel section of our evening. We have Professor Alvarez, who you met during her keynote. We have Bishop Burbidge, who you've probably already met. And we also have a married young adult couple, Catherine and Lorenzo Resendez. They are very involved here in youth and young adult ministry. Lorenzo is a counselor with Catholic Charities, and Catherine is a freelance sign language interpreter, and she's worked before with our diocese and the Archdiocese of Washington. So they can give a perspective of how a young couple lives social justice in our church. And our first question tonight is actually for Catherine and Lorenzo. And the question is, could you please respond to Professor Alvarez's talk and share how social teachings of the church impact your life right now?
Just pass it over there. Married life is awesome. I think that the things that she was sharing tonight and thinking about this as we're sitting here are so important for young adults, because young adults desire something to be passionate about. They want something to be involved with, want something to be believe strongly about. And whether that's good, bad, or otherwise, I think the social teaching of the church offers many of these opportunities. We've lived and seen the pro-life movement. We've been to the March for Life several times. I was involved in Students for Life in college as one example. We grew up in southern New Mexico, in very close to the border, and some of the issues of immigration and border issues I didn't even really consider until I moved away and was like, oh yeah, that was really a part of my life, until I went to college in the Midwest, and people didn't know what green chili was. But one of the things that young people were involved with in regard to the immigration situation in the border area was called Project Oak Tree, which has been started and suspended several times over the last several years with the influx of immigrants from South and Central America. And the Diocese of El Paso, our neighboring diocese, has a permanent program to support these people coming into the country legally, getting through all of these paperwork, and then they get through the paperwork and then are literally out on the street and need that kind of in-between point to get from into the country into wherever they're going. And with the huge influx several years ago, the bishop asked the bishop of our home diocese of Las Cruces to set up a temporary program to run a Project Oak Tree as well. And it was named such because Abraham met the mysterious visitors under an oak tree. And so we were able to meet and share time with these people coming into the U.S., serving meals, providing showers, providing legal help, an internet connection to contact your relative to get your plane ticket ready or your bus ticket. And that was a very beautiful experience. And many, many, many young people involved. It was during the summer. We cooked lunch on Mondays was our thing. And that was another beautiful experience. Another thing I'd like to share before I pass it over, maybe two. Last year, I was a missionary in Kansas City, and I got to know the community of the Lamb. It's a religious community of brothers and sisters founded in France, but have a community in Kansas City. And they live a life of radical simplicity and poverty. All of their food, all of their life is all completely based on dependent on God's providence and donations. And their ministry isn't something necessarily in a parish or they do something, but they go on mission in the neighborhoods. And they live in a very poor neighborhood in Kansas City, but they go on mission in their neighborhood and then in other neighborhoods in Kansas City as well. And they go begging for food. And at first I heard that and was like, well, that's a little weird. And people, I'll go to Aldi's and buy you the whole vegetable aisle. I'll bring you some food. It's okay. But that's their ministry, and their mission is to go begging for their noon meal. And it was explained to me that sometimes people come knocking at your door. I have something to offer you. Here, let me tell you about this product, or let me tell you about my church, or let me tell you about this thing. And I'm coming in a position of authority to tell you something. But when the little brothers and little sisters come begging, I'm asking something of you. Can you give me a sandwich? Can you give me a piece of fruit? Can you even just fill my water bottle? And especially for the poor, this gives such great dignity, because so often it's like, here, let me give you all these things. Oftentimes the poor feel like they may feel like they have nothing to give or have nowhere to go. But when the little brothers and little sisters come in this position of humility, it gives great dignity to those who they encounter. And then, if they are invited in, if they can have a conversation, maybe Jesus comes up. I mean, they're wearing habits, so that's kind of a natural transition. Then they can have the encounter with the person. Even something as simple as filling a water bottle. Almost everyone could fill a water bottle. And one final story of how this impacts me and how the social justice teaching for young adults. I'm a freelance sign language interpreter, and I was at an interpreting job a few weeks ago, and it was a group of just sad people, hurting people, suffering people that I was interpreting for, and there was some free time in between the meeting, and there was the deaf client I was working with was teaching sign language to some of the other participants, and then there was another person there who was teaching origami to some of the other participants. And when they were sharing their gifts, as Professor Helen talked about, when they were sharing their gifts in that moment of, hey, I can teach you some sign language, that's something I know about, or I can teach you some origami, that was the most I saw them blossom, the most I saw life, a smile in that whole situation. It was a complete 180 from the rest of the depressing day that I was working there. But in that moment, those few minutes in between times that wasn't even part of the program, they were able to share.
In addition to that, I think, in my perspective, one of the things that young adults have a huge experience of the Catholic social teaching because of the fact that we're so inundated by it. In the sense of our life is moving a mile a minute right now, and there are so many things in our life, whether it's starting families, whether it's the marriage idea, whether it's our own family and parents and grandparents on the other end of life, and learning how to be able to work with that in a, as you were saying, a slow and intentional manner of taking the time to be able to just be there. I think that's something that we lose a lot in our culture of just the speed and need for productivity, and being able to just slow down and be there for another person is huge. A good message I think we all needed to hear.
Thank you. They did a great job. First question of the night, right? Thank you. Okay. Bishop, this next question is for you. Pope Francis said we are to be a church of the poor. Bishop, are you confident that our diocese is meeting the need and the needs mentioned in the presentation?
I'm confident that what Professor Alvarez said is that as a diocese, we are taking advantage of each day to reach out to the poor and to those in need. I'm confident, I can't say I'm confident that we're going to eradicate poverty in the Diocese of Arlington. But as the professor reminded us tonight, we have to be able at the end of the day to say, well, we did our part. We had an opportunity to help someone, and we did. And each day that's going on in the Diocese of Arlington, most especially through the great work as a diocese of our Catholic Charities, the incredible stories that take place there every day, but also in all the parishes. One of the things I like to do when I visit a parish, don't tell your pastor this, but I always sneak a parish bulletin and take one home with me. And I always get amazed when I look at the ministries of the parish, in our diocese. It's incredible. The outreach, the care to the poor and to the needy. So I think as a diocese, we have every reason. We're blessed. We're blessed as a diocese. We live in a good area of the country, and most of us have the resources and beyond that we need. But we also should be very proud in knowing that we're doing our part. And I think that's all that God asks of us, and never tire of doing it. And it's through you, it's through your generosity, it's through your sacrifices that allow us to be faithful to what our Holy Father is asking. Thank God he keeps reminding us to take care of the poor.
Thank you, Bishop. Professor Albury, we thought you could answer this next one. Don't be nervous. What do you think is the most effective way to promote a culture of life, anti-abortion, in today's misinformed Planned Parenthood world, and to get this across to our youth? No pressure.
Let's think. So I've been working on this for a couple of decades, and it's, again, by process of distinction. I'll tell you, I used to think it was by having all the facts at hand. And when I started at the Bishops' Conference years ago, we did this huge national survey showing that most people didn't know much about the abortion issue. They thought abortion was only legal for the first 3 months or the only 6 months. They didn't realize it's actually been legal for all 9 months since Roe. And they didn't really know about the child and the levels of development. They didn't, and they still, the feds have, and very few researchers have touched the question of what the woman suffers. And so I tried all of that, and I think it all has its place. My caution is that none of it's a silver bullet. When I used to go lobby in Congress, and I would get in there, and they would be getting cozy with Planned Parenthood in advance, and I would always have outstudied Planned Parenthood. You know, my job was to be the smartest person in the room. I saw it, and I would have all the facts, and I would correct the Planned Parenthood person with a smile that was not genuine, and so I actually think the most, I mean, I feel about this now after years the way I feel about the issue of the attractiveness of marriage and commitment to people. Modeling it is huge. Like, how do you get a generation that's not getting married till like 27 or 29 to say, no, marriage is good. You know, and half are getting married later. You got lots of people in their 30s or just thinking about it. I'll meet people who say, well, I've been living together 5 years. I mean, don't rush me. And, oh, God. You know, you're 34, rush, right? Think. You know, think about this seriously. So the idea of parenthood, to me, has the same question about the idea of marriage, that we actually have to explicitly have this conversation with people about, I mean, I was terrified of being a parent. I made it the first chapter of my book on, you know, Catholic women speak for themselves, because I met so many women who were terrified of becoming mothers. So I think giving witness to what it actually means to be a parent, and then, of course, walking with the pregnant, panicked person. Walking with the pregnant, panicked person who is thinking about abortion. And then, you know, there's lots of, to me, all these years of activism, and right now, again, saying this as someone in their later 50s who's raised kids, I'm as moved by an unborn child as I am by someone else in need, you know, be they 13 or 80. And so for me, it's just this radical equality and dignity of every human life that I just want to open people's eyes to. It's a concept that I just say, do you realize? Like, you know, step aside from all the politics about speciesism and, you know, whether we're caring enough for the animals. Yes, we should care enough for animals and the environment. But human life just screams out for some very special sacred treatment. We're fragile, we suffer more, that we're so different and we're afraid we're not accepted by the other. We look so different, we have such different styles. And to me, my shtick for the unborn has changed utterly as I got more mature, that it's the same way I have to accept someone who sits next to me somewhere, or a student who comes to my office and is struggling, or someone I meet who seems to need help. I met a woman at a women's conference who just poured out her life to me. I was speaking at it like 5 minutes before I went up on stage, and I was just overwhelmed by her sorrow. And I feel the same way about her that I do about an unborn child, that we have to really talk to people about the dignity and sacredness of life in a very just that we can't be treating people this way. We have to start at a baseline of respect, and killing and harming is not respect, and that we know this at our gut level, and we can't just talk about it as something that has to do with women's rights. We have to, they really are both deserve dignity, and if we start giving it to one, not the other, let me just recommend here on a lighter note, you can all whip out your phones. There's a hysterical woman in Canada with pink hair, and she has a video called Choice for Two, and she has a young woman with Down syndrome sitting beside her in this blue wig, and the girl she's very beautiful, and the blue wig, and the other woman has the pink wig. And she says, you just have to see her. She's a comic who does pro-life, and I think she really gets at what I'm saying. She has another one called The Magical Birth Canal, and she takes a baby, and she made this like paper mache birth canal, and she goes, no rights? Rights. It's the magical birth canal. I mean, she's hysterical. And she's like, I think pink hair is best. I think everybody with blue hair, I just don't think we should allow them. I mean, and if we can figure out that they have blue hair before birth, we're done. I mean, but she is just hysterical. And that she gets at, it's called choice number 42. She gets at what I'm talking about. It's this awe at human life. We didn't make it. We can't destroy it. Something obviously magnificent made this. And then in order to help people assist, you really do have to walk with that person, which is, and see above making time. So I know that's a lot, but that's what I've learned. That's my summary of 30 years.
Thank you very much. This next question is for any of you. Feel free to answer if you feel called to. What would your recommendations for helping the individuals on the streets or intersections be?
I got the short answer first. We have a box of granola bars in each of our car. When we go shopping, we pick up an extra box of granola bars, and it's always easy to just hand a granola bar with a smile. And we've learned that the man went on our way to church is named Bob, so we pray for him with a name and a smile and a granola bar. And sometimes it's less about the granola bar, but a name and a smile. It's just a simple dignity, simple answer.
You won't be surprised that my strategy involves talking. So my first thing is to say hello, to engage. Like, hi, and either I have some money, or I'm sorry I don't have any money with me today, but I hope to catch you next time. You know, and to have a little chat while I'm sitting there at the intersection. Every once in a while, you'll meet someone who has a further conversation at the Metro and they need a job or something. And my husband and my son have taken that on. They got one of these guys a job at the DNC. He's at the Democratic National Committee now doing office work. And my son gives them his phone number and he has them to give calls. So sort of I stop, have a conversation, and I do give money. My husband figures out if they need a job, and my son, his phone rings wherever he is and he has chats. We all have our different things. He still gets people calling him from Chicago where he went to school. Just has a conversation. And it's interesting because I think they've given him more gifts than he's given them in the end. They bring him clothes. He needed them. He doesn't like clothes. He doesn't buy much. So most of his nicest stuff came from this woman on the streets in Chicago. And I don't know where she's getting it, but it fits. But anyway, so he engages in regular conversation. He has a couple on the line and just sort of fills in for various needs here and there. So it's something different for each of us.
Yeah, and I would say I like both those suggestions. I do think it is invitation and speaking to because you are speaking to a person. Just a quick example, right outside of the cathedral is an intersection, and there's been a gentleman there for a couple weeks that I've gotten to know. A couple of the priests at the cathedral rectory have gotten to know. We've engaged, and through conversation, he is now a frequent visitor to the cathedral, and he is gaining so much more with the love he's experiencing in the parish, the number of people who are assisting him in other ways, and his life has been enriched. But it was only through an invitation.
I can do just one quick one as well. It's just,
ahead,
as a
Lorenzo.
counselor, during part of my training, one of the things I worked at was a soup kitchen as part of my internship. And we would meet down there with a lot of people who were homeless and who were hungry. And we would simply just talk with them. And as everybody else on the table here is saying, it's amazing to see how much they just crave that interaction. Even if it is just eye contact. I had one man come back to the counseling room to talk to me, just simply to say that I miss people just looking me in the eye. And it's just like, even just from the car and waving at me saying I don't have anything, he says he loves that more than anything else. So even just that eye contact can be huge to them.
Thank you so much. I like that it was a variety of things. One, just the easy granola bar, and then having a longer conversation. Thank you. This next question is also to anybody. What action is being taken to counter on federal and state level to ensure dignity of life? What can we as lay people do to actively confront legislative measures on state and federal levels?
A couple of thoughts. So, you know, there's way too much on this. Actually, the stuff that was spoken of in Virginia on abortion is just unbelievable. They really shot themselves in the foot by putting all the focus on late term or born alive. So that conversation needs to be had. You know, people are not even realizing that it's been legal all this time, but it's a horrific thing to contemplate. You know, obviously there's some easy up or down stuff on, you know, whether it's assisted suicide or capital punishment. The other thing is, frankly, I put it back on you to be super informed when you go in to have a conversation with somebody. Like, you know, there's all kinds of like anti-poverty programs, social welfare programs. Most of them don't have much of a track record. We're good at the United States at food, clothing, shelter. We're pretty good at the basics, and our rates of poverty have gone down because of it. We're not good at social mobility. And so the question to me, one of the things that I would love to see right now people get more involved in is education and employment and labor markets. You know, there's so many people who, you know, are not destined for college, who need something, whether it's an apprenticeship or an internship or whatever, or some other kind of training. I think family structure is an important thing to get involved in, talking to kids about postponing sexual involvement, getting married before having children, and so forth would make such a huge difference. Not all government, just the idea of advocating for X government program and X dollars, yes, we need these programs that maintain people, but the idea that they are actually going to get us to the finish line of social mobility, of getting kids good education and a good job and a stable family, that's going to require your knowing more than you know now, probably, except for those of you here in the Beltway who are already working on this. You know, I just would say get expert in something that you're really interested in. For me, it was family structure. For some other people here, it may be labor markets. For some other people, it may be the education to employment pipeline. But get to know that in a lot of the government programs, yes, again, we need this, we need to sustain people, but try to figure out what works and what doesn't in an area you're interested in and work on that. Because it's just generalized statements about government programs are really not enough. I mean, we've had some of them for 50 years and no social mobility has resulted from some of them, so.
And as all of you know, the issues are just so complex, and they come at us at so many different angles, and sometimes very quickly. It's hard to stay informed. It's hard to stay on top of it. I'm going to put an advertisement in once again for the Virginia Catholic Conference. I think there's some information back there. I suggest strongly that all of you sign up to be recipient of the communication that comes out of the Virginia Catholic Conference. We're very blessed to have it here in Virginia with our lobbyists and those who keep us informed. They're on top of every bill possible that will impact all the groups that Professor Alvarez just mentioned. You know, I'm so proud of this conference tonight because, you know, when we advertised it, the dignity of life, and we had listed the unborn and the sick and those with disabilities and the poor, it all comes under that umbrella. And every day, at least one of them seems to be impacted by some new proposal or bill. And so what the Virginia Catholic Conference does, it keeps you informed in a very user-friendly way. And it makes it even easy for you to contact the member of the House of Delegates or the representatives or the state senators or our senators, our two senators. And we have learned from the inside source that those things make a difference. They count phone calls, they count email messages, they count texts. And when it gets to a certain point, that legislator is awakened. And I do want to assure all of you that both Bishop Nestout and Richmond and I are working very hard, both publicly and behind the scenes, with our legislators, especially most recently when, as Professor Alvarez just mentioned, the dignity of life was, just so disrespected in a way that we could not even believe. So all of us have to be engaged. And so just a suggestion, if I could make to all of you.
We have just one more question. There were so many great questions. This is just a quick clarifying question for Professor Alvarez. What was that law article that you mentioned on programs that work about teen mothers?
So you probably know there's a website, Social Science Research Network, ssrn.com, and all of this scholarship goes up on it free for the public. So all my law review articles, most of them, I guess, are there. And this one was called Beyond the Sex Ed Wars, Single Mothers Search for Communion. And I can't remember the law review it was published in, but it's there, it's free, it's on ssrn.com, Beyond the Sex Ed Wars. And you can find any scholar you want on any topic. It's crazy what's available on that. So, and I did a review of this. I have another one coming out, updated stuff. I'm not sure it's on there yet, called Religion, Sex, and the Administrative State. And that'll be up there soon. And it's a review of some newer discussion of what's going on at HHS on these programs.
Thank you. Thank you again to our panelists for your responses. Thank you to all of our moderators and facilitators for being with us. And as we come to an end of our time together tonight, I hope that you've left with just a better understanding of what God might be calling you to do in your own life. And for that reason, our conference was not just to come here and meet each other and talk, but to instead go out and get involved and find your issue that you want to support. So for that reason, tonight we have tables in the back after we've adjourned here. And let me just tell you about those tables back there and who is represented. One is the Respect Life Office of the Diocese. Another is Catholic Charities. We have the Office of Virginia Catholic Conference, Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Campaign for Human Development. We also have the Creation Care Commission of the Diocese, which talks about caring for our common home. We have Catholic Mobilizing Network, which is working against the death penalty. And we have Porto Charities, which is working for people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. So there's a variety of issues that you could get involved with, of people that you could support. So after Father Bob closes in prayer, the bar will be open. Go get a drink. We have snacks. You can go and talk to the people at the tables there and try to answer the call tonight, because I know if I go home and don't sign up for something, I won't be held accountable to actually get involved. So I would invite you to do the same thing. And I also invite Father Bob up to close us in prayer.
Thank you, Allison, for emceeing the roundtable discussion and our panel. Great. And I think it's been a very powerful evening to be together tonight for a couple different reasons. But one of those reasons is tonight has allowed us the opportunity to recognize and respect people in our church who are working on different issues that all flow from the inherent dignity of the human person. And many of those groups are gathered together tonight in not in a polarizing way, but has a unified witness and one voice that speaks of the dignity of all human life and the gift of all of creation that God has entrusted to us. Another reason is that there's 382 people here tonight that came, and over 100 of them are young adults who've come tonight. So we're delighted. We're delighted to accompany these young adults as people that will go on to create a hope-filled future for us. And also delighted that these young adults and all of us came tonight and got to meet a Helen Alvarez, a Professor Helen Alvarez, and a Bishop Burbidge in our talks. And a young adult married couple, Lorenzo and Catherine, who the church means so much to them, that they're involved in the church, and to get to know and meet one another. And as Allison encouraged, and as Father Jerry Creedon would always end every Peace and Justice conference, he would say something like this. He said, "Now, what are we going to do about it? You know, are we going to leave it all up to Bishop Burbidge and to Professor Halvare to do it, or are we going to join forces together?" And so for everyone in this room, what's your cause? What tugs at your heart? What brings you to tears and moves you to act? And these groups do tremendous work. Dr. Art Bennett is here, who's the president of Catholic Charities. He told me recently there are 3,000 volunteers in Catholic Charities, you know, and we need more. And the Respect Life office with promoting the life of the unborn, but also Project Rachel, those who have been exploited and hurt by the abortion, to bring them healing, and Project Gabriel for those facing crisis pregnancies. We have our Creation Care Commission, and they're being developed in every parish so that we can, as Pope Francis said, take care of our earth that's crying out to us that we are polluting and destroying. Porto Charities, that includes the developmentally disabled and those special gifted, differently gifted, but special gifts, to include them in the life of the church and society. And we're grateful for their work. Also, the Virginia Catholic Conference, as the bishop said, you know, they send out these action alerts through email and a letter to your representative, and they know your representative by your zip code. It's all prepared for you. You put your name on it and send it in. And legislators, I mean, I'm told that every email or letter they get, they know it represents 50 to 100 people among their constituencies. So it's a powerful voice, and they listen and pay attention to that. And then also the Catholic Mobilizing Network that works to abolish the death penalty, and has every pope in my lifetime has always spoken out against the death penalty, and our church's teaching has been developed. And so Pope John Paul II limited it to this. He said, the times when the death penalty can be justified are rare, if practically non-existent. And then Pope Francis said, I'm going to develop it even more. It's got to be because of the dignity of the human person. It is now inadmissible in our church's teaching. It's now inadmissible because of the dignity of all life. So they're doing great work. And Virginia, per capita, has the second most executions in our country, second only to Texas. So if that message was ever going to be developed, it should be here in our state. So action items: go to those tables. The bar is going to be open. Socialize. Go to the tables. Meet others involved. Just a final thank you before our closing prayer. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Professor Helen Alvarez, for being our keynoter. Thank you, Bishop Burbidge, for celebrating Mass, preaching so beautifully, and staying to be with us. Thank you, Lorenzo and Catherine, for speaking and sharing and representing our young adults and being involved in the life of the church. I want to thank members of the planning committee: Amy McInerney from Respect Life Office, Diana Snyder from Communications Office of our diocese, Kevin Boley from Young Adult Ministry, Corinne Minogue and Sarah Balonis from Special Events and Multicultural Office, Catherine Hassinger from Catholic Charities, and from Nativity, Allison Fram, Carlos Gutierrez, our Facilities Director, and Adrian Swidel, Administrative Assistant. And thanks for all the planning. Thank you to the Peace and Justice Committee for their great work in providing these opportunities and supporting the bishop in his teaching role of the social teachings of our church. I want to thank our caterers tonight. It was Boyd and Parker. So they did a great job too. And let us pray. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of creation. You embrace with your tenderness all human life and pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and the beauty of all created things. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned, the elderly, and the forgotten, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives. May we be protectors of the world, that we may sow beauty and not pollution and destruction. We thank you for being with us this day and every day. Encourage us, we pray, in our daily efforts for justice, love, and peace. We ask this prayer with faith through Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay. Have a great evening. And, oh yeah, sure.
Just last thing, don't worry, I'm not making you stay. But our Creation Care representatives asked us to remind you that there are recycling bins in the back. So you can start right now helping with that ministry. And if you would just do that for us, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. Enjoy the evening, the social time.